ladies and gentlemen, how are we on this fine evening? It is 5:58 in the evening. We're starting 2 minutes earlier because, I'm nice and I'm currently mid-flight to Buffalo with two Ferrari GT3s. But we promised to give you some content this evening, and we started a new series called CANDID Pit Stops, where we get to chat and learn a little bit more about the drivers that we commentate on and watch every day. So today, I would like to introduce you, the one and only Tom Gorian. How are you, my friend?
Hey man, I'm not doing that bad. Not doing that bad today. How's yourself, man?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right.
Hey,
It's
nice.
it's been a very good day. As I say, I've been sitting in a cockpit all afternoon, so it's fine. I'm still in it just now. I am looking out over Canada as
Hey.
as we speak, but that's not the point of today's thing. So we're gonna chat a little bit and learn a little bit about you, Tom, and just so that everybody knows who you are, I thought, why didn't you introduce yourself to the stream in some way, shape, or form?
Um. Well, I feel very awkward when I try and do this type of stuff.
It's all right.
Um. But how the hell do I even do this? Um. But
Just
yeah.
introduce your name and who you are.
Oh yeah. My name's Tom Gorian, Formula One fan, football fan, Formula One gaming content creator, maybe if you want to call it, Scousman, and just a prick at times. If we're gonna be honest.
So is everyone, mate. So is everyone. So you already say you're a Formula One fan. To what extent are you a Formula One fan, and who's your favourite driver?
Oh, um, oh well. We're getting straight into it, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going straight to it.
Um, so I've been a long time Formula One fan. Actually, this whole fandom of Formula One of mine started in 2003. Right, so I have to go back. So 2003, I was probably 3 years old at the time because I was born in 99. First race I ever watched was San Marino '03. That was the Black Armed race where Michael Schumacher's mother died, and he got told I think it was like an hour before the race or like 30 minutes before the race, and it was infamous. I think it was the first race he won of that season. I'm not sure,
Hmm.
but yeah, that's the race that most people know it as. Obviously, at the time, I knew nothing about the sport, knew nothing about the cars or the drivers. I just knew that these weird, curved, things that go fast with four wheels and they sound absolutely loud, go across, some pieces of black lines, and I thought it was phenomenal. And I literally like so back in the day I used to have like a little square TV on the top right corner of my kitchen,
Hmm.
and I would be sat at the table just like watching these races, and that was really the first time, my first proper, I'd say, memory of watching Formula One. And you're probably the same like
Yeah,
timeline as me as far as like what the let's say the early mid 2000s, maybe '02, maybe '03 for you.
I
Is
was
that
so I
right?
was born in 2001. So my
Oh,
first
oh
race
my
that I
God.
watched, I believe it would have potentially either been I just turned I was four. I was four, so it was only a few years.
Wow.
So I was maybe a few months into my year of four when I saw the first race, which was 2005 Bahrain.
Oh
Um,
wow.
and I only saw a little bit. So I don't remember much from back then. All I remember is these fantastic cars going around the track as well, and just the noise was it's something that you kind of stick with. And do you know another thing that got me into F1 was actually it wasn't even just watching it; it was my dad.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
dad was he bought me a Scalextric set. So actually, it was a Hot Wheels sort of type of
Uh
Scalextric set, and the two drivers it had a Jordan and it had a Ferrari, right? And one of the drivers at the time was in the car. I can't remember who was it. It must have been it must have been Michael Schumacher.
uh
And
yeah.
I'm
The
trying to
Michael.
think. Yeah, I'm trying to think who would have been in that Jordan. I'm really
So
unsure.
what? This was '05.
It would be. It would
So
actually around. It would be around about
Carthaginian.
03, 05.
So it wasn't Hill. Hill long retired. It, the only guy I can think of is really Carthaginian who drove for Jordan in that time
It
frame. Like
might be. I know. You know something. It's
it's
probably
not
up the loft
Carthaginian.
somewhere. I might have to go and find it and take it downstairs and see if I can repair it. You know.
Wait, you still have it?
Yeah, I still have it. We have a lot of stuff that I have had since I
Madness.
was a child. You know.
Oh wow. I
Um,
thought my dad was bad. Jesus Christ.
my dad is very bad for like storing stuff, but there's boxes up there from years ago that have got nothing
Oh
in them, but
wow.
they're boxes. But all memories as well. I think that's the
Oh
important
yeah.
thing. For me, I had a lot of passions when I was growing up, and obviously I've probably had probably three passions, and that was
Mhm.
World War Two, racing,
Ah yeah.
and sports. Any
Ah
just general sports. I had a little bit of a
yeah.
passion for football. I played football from a very young age till I was about 11 or 12, and then I started
Ah
swimming.
yeah.
So like I was swimming from the age of 7 competitively all the way up till this year when I turned
Ah
21 in. So I turned 21 last October, and I continued swimming all the way up till April this year, and then I finally had to
wow.
sort of throw in the towel. But for me, racing has been something a part of my life that sort of kept it together. It's something that I can always rely on watching, and it's always enjoyable. So, um, yeah, that to me makes my life happier, and
Yeah,
I enjoy it more. But
I
I'm
agree.
just
Yeah, I really agree with that. Um, I ju- like the thing is this, like with me, like you just mentioned about about World War Two stuff. Like my dad is like really well, I wouldn't say obsessed with like World War Two stuff, but like it's more like like what collections of like tanks and maybe
yeah,
magazines and stuff. And I think over the last what I'd say 5, 6, 7 years, I've really been paying more attention towards like the Second World War and stuff. Well, not
mm,
really like paying attention, but like just like getting more information because like obviously when I got taught in school it was just the Germans that they invaded Poland and they forced France and England and then eventually America to join in the war, and then we had Italy and then we had Japan, and
Russia,
all this stuff
Japan,
happened. But
yeah,
more recently I've learned about Japan's bombings on the United States, and plus with the new movie Oppenheimer that's just came out last
yeah.
week,
I
obviously with
can't
the
wait to
atomic
see that.
bomb. Yeah, I still need to see that. I've learned about the atomic bomb and the real significance of that, and even not just with movies as well, but also with games in general. Like the best example I can probably give to you is probably, well, I wouldn't say, well, this is not really the best example as far as like games, but like Battlefield and probably I'd say what Call of Duty, Black Ops, probably at the end. Well, probably yeah, Call of Duty World at War first, and then the original Black Ops One and Cold War. Like I think that when those types of games are made, it makes some real historical context as
Yeah,
far as the Second World War, and I think that's why my dad's really intrigued about it.
there's a lot of
Um,
like aspects like World War Two that intrigue me as well because
yeah,
not only did you actually had like multiple battles being fought at once, and a lot of people
yeah,
think that it's just one of those things that makes you think about your life and how important it actually is to you.
mm,
And during that time period, a lot of people were stressed, a lot of people were going through it, but they carried on.
yeah,
And I think for me, my favorite sort of part of the war was the Pacific campaign between America, the UK, and also you had the actual battles that you don't hear about as well on Indian borders during that
yeah,
time. You know, Pakistan were interested in India as well
mm,
at that time, but they were scared of Japan, so they actually at that time put more troops on the border of
mm,
Pakistan and India, not to fight against India because there'd been constant fighting between Pakistan
yeah.
and India, because I believe it wasn't split at that time, but there's always been fire exchanged between the two,
Oh
because
yeah,
Pakistan wanted to be an independent country to India, and that was fair because it was the UK, it was the United Kingdom that wanted to create that. You know, they declared all that as being India, and they
Yeah,
declared Burma as Burma. They declared everything as this, that, the next thing, and it's countries' independence that matters. And then when it came to World War Two, you know, the only reason that we lost half of our empire was due to giving guarantees to countries if they helped us during World War Two, they would get their
yeah.
independence. In
Yeah,
some ways,
especially like the lesser countries, like really around the Soviet border and the Russians and stuff with Hungary as well. I watched the video. Obviously the Hungarian Grand Prix was this past weekend, and I
yeah,
watched the video by Aidan Millward. Highly underrated YouTube. I got you
yeah.
guys
Oh,
should
he's
check
great.
him out as far as
He's
Formula One
great.
history. He's so good. I learned about how the first Hungarian Grand Prix came about.
Mhm.
And obviously, in the mid 80s, well, the early mid 80s, obviously it was the Cold War with the Soviets and the Americans,
Mhm.
and all the countries around Russia and the Soviet Union stuff with involved Hungary, and like realistically, the Hungarian Grand Prix was one of the first proper times about Hungary really welcoming other stuff outside of the Cold War with Formula
Yeah.
One, and
At
obviously back then
at
you're
that
talking
time,
about
the
these.
Soviet Union was starting to collapse, wasn't it? So,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's where countries started taking advantage of the Soviet Union's sort of lesser power now on places like that. And you
yeah.
know, Hungary, which is quite a big for them, it was quite a big state to have, and for that to essentially be a case of they're no longer wanting to be Soviet. They're
Yeah.
wanting to be an independent democratic country in some ways, have their own independence. And so the way that they did that was they reached out to Formula One in some way and said, "Hey, we want to hold an F1 Grand Prix. We're not really sure how to do it, but
Mm.
we're gonna build a track, and that's
Mm.
the way it's gonna be." And if you saw the latest Grand Tour episode that they did, you see quite a lot of the tracks that they built because obviously Formula One during the war and everything didn't really
Yeah.
want to go anywhere near there. It's the same. Well, during Cold War and all this stuff, didn't want to go anywhere
Yeah.
near that because they just didn't want to be a part of politics, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And they built loads of tracks like around Poland and everything that you've never heard of before. There's
Yeah.
tracks in East. There's a track in Estonia, right? That it's what's it called? Um, I can't remember the name of it, but it is honestly, you can look at it and it's like Snetterton, just a smaller version of Snetterton.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's literally all grass runoff. There's no anything. It's just amazing, and I think tracks like that kind of give character to like the racing that we do. JB's actually put a message in the chat here and said, "Tom, who's your favourite driver? Out of
Um.
anyone?"
Oh. Well, the thing is this. Right now, I don't really have a favorite driver. I, in my honest opinion, I find the whole tribalism as far as favorite drivers. I find it a complete joke because, obviously, I think like social media as far as like the Formula One engagement and just fans in general just like really ruin the sport. And I'm not trying to call anyone out, but I will say this: the best example I can give about this is really Lewis fans and Max fans, especially in the 2021 season, and just the way that those two fan bases were literally going at each other during that season. If it was literally San Marino, if it was Spain, or eventually the crash at Silverstone, or even Italy. Hell, you know what? Even Abu Dhabi. I mean, all that shit kicked off between them, and so honestly, I'm not really a fan of any. I mean, there's a lot of certain drivers that I do like as of right now. I'd say, I honestly feel like I don't mind Lando Norris. Perez isn't that bad. Uh, Obviously, I was a massive fan of Sebastian Vettel before he retired.
Mm.
I don't mind Yuki Tsunoda. Um, Daniel, I did make a post on my Twitter account a couple of days ago when he was in his Red Bull back when he joined in 2014,
Mm.
and just watching just some of the highlights when he was at Red Bull from I'd say 14 to maybe 17 or like yeah probably 17. Just some of the overtakes he was just making. He came from like you watch some of his overtakes from Monza and just his dive bombs, even China when he won that China race from like sick from the grid after he literally got one qualifying lap in. Just some of the moves he was making, like just you just
I
look
rate
back and
him.
thinking, there's no way, no way he makes that move cleanly without contact, and then he just makes him maybe a slight lock up here and there, but he's still
He
the
still
guy.
fixes it, yeah.
Yeah, he still makes the corner and he gets the position, and I'm just like, how do you do that? So, I mean, just like currently, I have a lot of like drivers I don't mind watching. I actually like watching them, but as far as like the like drivers that I used to really tribalize during this fan period of Formula One, I'd say well, I'd say Sebastian, but not as much. But like realistically, the two guys that I'd really support was probably Kimi.
Yeah.
Back when he was at Ferrari, I think Kimi was like the first guy I started really liking
Same
because I
here, to be
think,
honest.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
I just
you,
liked his name when I was younger, Kimi Räikkönen, and
oh yeah,
that my grandmother actually, she's no longer with us, God bless her
yeah,
soul in many ways. Um, when I was learning to talk and stuff like that, she would enunciate names,
mm,
and she knew that I liked racing, so she found out racing drivers' names, and I I took my Ferrari down one day,
uh,
and my granddad said, "Is that Kimi Räikkönen's car?" And
oh
I
god,
tried to say it, and I was Kimi Räikkönen. So my grandma stuck on that, and she enunciated it. So Kimi Räikkönen. It's the same with Yamaha,
yeah,
ambulance, and that's the things that I remember from being a child. Is my my grandparents and my parents enunciating things like that to me,
yeah,
and I'm learning things as I go, and I think that's part of your childhood you'll never get back in some ways as
oh
well,
yeah,
because you
yeah,
learn these things as a child and you never have to think of them again, do you? But
uh, no,
there's certain
wouldn't say that.
things that you remember from being a child, and Kimi Räikkönen was one driver that I remember the most, was because it was already said to me quite a lot as I was learning
Yeah,
to talk and learning to properly say words in some ways, and that's how my grandma told me about a lot of things when I was young. I was just by enunciating things and pronouncing them the correct way, learning about it,
yeah,
and that's how I learned and stuff like that. So yeah, it's interesting when you look back at your older self and you think, ah, I was actually a really good child because I knew this stuff, because I was getting taught this stuff from a young age, and that's
really good child.
yeah,
It's like
I
you're
wasn't.
doing illegal
I
stuff
was a little
while watching football.
I was I was a, I was a little shit in reality. I probably still am to
Oh
this
yeah,
day. Um,
same here.
Jamie says, from what I've heard, Oppenheimer is a real eye opener. I agree. I
Yeah,
cannot wait. I've just not had the money this month to go and see it, but as soon as I get paid, I'm going to see it. Um, yeah, it definitely is a film that I'm looking forward to. And if anyone says, "Oh, do you want to go see the Barbie movie with me?" they get a swift kick up the arse.
yeah, and a
Simple
slap
as.
in the face as well.
Yeah,
Simply put.
exactly. Now, Tom, we'll talk a little bit more about yourself just now. But first of all, you race in Formula One, right? On the new game, the new gen, you've moved into it. How are you finding the new gen, especially the new update that happened yesterday?
Um, well, as far as the new update is concerned, I'm not really bothered by like these updates where it's like minor tweaks. Obviously the main thing that was a little bit uh just like but not of a worrying concern but like an eye opener was just like the AI difficulty was like too easy because I'm doing a drive career mode on Haas with the Haas team, and in a 16 race season I've won 3 times on
Yeah,
103 difficulty. So now I'm even on 104 right now, which is probably like 2 or 3 difficulty levels higher than what I'm used to at this stage of the game's life, and I was getting like top 5 finishes, like all
yeah,
on merit, and with like no safety cars and nothing. Um, and the first race I did, the first career mode race I did, was literally yesterday with the new update, and yeah, like 4 laps into the race, I was in fourth. I had a good start, and I just remember Leclerc, Hamilton, and Verstappen. They all fucked off from me like 5 laps in, and they already built like a 4 second gap already. So like that's when I realized, okay, yeah. So the AI are they've definitely been fixed. They've definitely been buffed. there are a couple of things as well I've also noticed as far as like car performance as well with the McLarens as well, and also driver ratings they've been updated as well. But as far as the overall F1 23 game, I kind of have mixed feelings on it so far. I mean, we literally started the game's life. I mean, I'm on a G923, Logitech G923,
Hmm.
and I've literally started the game with no force feedback, which after a whole year of F1 22, like racing on the new game with no force feedback really felt weird, but I felt
Hmm.
like I was getting used to it. And then when the force feedback got fixed, yeah, it was a bit of a weird experience to try and go back to, but I've eventually gotten used to it again. But as far as the actual game itself, it's all right. It's not really the standout game that we kind of wanted. As far as like the career modes, the my team and the driver career modes, nothing really has changed. Nothing's really been updated. Maybe some minor tweaks here or there, but nothing like really ground like breaking has been added. Like the only difference between what last year's game and this year's game is, as far as what the difference is, really just gameplay fixes. I think we all agree that F1 22. I mean, obviously,
Its
22 is
playability
probably
was shit.
overhated. Yeah, like 22 is not really as like. I think it's overhated just simply because of just the way the gameplay is, both from an offline perspective and from a handling perspective. I think a lot of people didn't enjoy the handling of the game as far as just the weight and the understeer. I'd say, and just in how unpredictable the retraction was as well. But I don't think it's like the worst F1 game of all time.
No, it definitely isn't.
Um,
The problem.
Compared to like 2014 and 15 and stuff, then yeah, those are the worst. But like just like 22, I think 22 was like a massive disappointment, and I even made a video about it, like literally why F1 22 is a bad F1 game, and I think all my points were literally valid. So I think as far as the expectation coming into 23, the only real new thing that came for 23 was realistically breaking points in F1 world,
Mhm.
and breaking points a disappointment because it's 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 still the same as 2021. There's just a linear story. There's no real advancements in gameplay. The difficulty level is still the same between easy, medium, and hard. There's no difficulty slider like there is for any other of the game mode. There's no choices that affect the story, and the story doesn't change regardless of where you finish.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just linear. It's just linear, and I just felt
it
like
it kind of makes
when
it kind of like null and void as a game mode because you kind of
yeah,
want to be like, at least with, we're looking at FIFA's sort of story mode version as well.
yeah,
A lot of your choices did actually affect the gameplay in some ways, right? It's
yeah,
the same company, but why couldn't they have implemented something? For example, if you crash out of a race,
yeah,
you get slandered, like fuck,
mm,
But they don't. They don't have that. The
mm,
only thing that really dragged me to the breaking point was the fact that they used sort of real creators again, sort of Twitter handles and stuff like Jimmy Broadbent, and that I thought that was
yeah,
interesting. That was quite funny.
yeah,
But for me, right, the one thing that really ruined this game, going back to F1 22, was the handling. Right, the handling was
mm,
absolutely perfect in the first few weeks of the game, and then the esports guys complained.
mm.
So then they changed it. Not my
Yeah.
problem that the esports guys complain. It was never my problem that the esports guys complained. Just because
What
I
was
was
it like?
quicker.
What was it complaining about? Like, was it
They were
like just like
complaining. So they were talking about the physics. The
ah,
physics
yeah.
felt, in many ways, and
Oh
I'm
yeah,
going to
because
say
of
this.
the force not the force feedback, the FPS glitch,
Yep.
wasn't there? Because like apparently, if I remember correctly, there was like a glitch with the FPS where like 60 FPS was like from a physics standpoint
Yeah.
better than 120 FPS because of Kerbs and obviously the second chicane in Monza. So they had to fix that as
Yeah, but
well.
even then, right, it wasn't even that bad. The problem I
Mm,
had was they had this level of the car felt perfect. You could save it. Do you know the handling right now on Formula
yeah,
123? Actually,
yeah,
pre update yesterday, right? The
yeah,
handling before that is exactly what the handling was like, near enough to what the game in F1 22 came out as.
yeah.
And that was perfect because the cars were a lot nicer to drive in some ways. You could
Mm,
feel getting on the power that you were
mm,
slipping. You were
Yeah.
slipping. You could feel the understeer. The wheel gets a little bit loose when you're understeering, and you can really feel
Yeah.
it when it snaps back on you, and you can feel the car. I did not
Yeah.
feel anything. The force feedback for me, and I use a Thrustmaster, bearing in mind, right? Which is
What
always
Frostmaster do you use?
I'm on the TMX. So it's the
TMX.
same. So it's the same sort of. It's the TM wheelbase
Yeah.
technology, right? They've still got this glitch on Xbox at the moment for Thrustmaster, which is bugging
Yeah.
me, and it's the worst on F1 where the force feedback goes. So every race you have to do qualifying, then you have to unplug your wheel, replug it in again. I mean, it's not much work, but I shouldn't
Yeah.
have to do that. But that's
Yeah.
something that's been carried along actually from since 21, because 22, after an update in 22, it was worse than ever. Like, I could do maybe 5 laps and then force feedback was gone. And then I have to do it again. I would pause and have to do it again. It just the playability for me as someone who pays for a wheel, who's paid for a
Mm.
wheel and has paid for this game for that game, for me to then have to say to myself I cannot actually race without being a hindrance and not being able to league race anymore last
Mm.
season because of those things. It put me down in a hole because I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it, but also I also understood the toxicity of the community and that
Yeah.
I wanted to be better than that. I didn't want to be a part of that in some ways. So
Mm.
I chose to stay away from it. I helped with a league that failed in the end, and I mean, I can't blame myself for that. That was other
Yeah.
people's doings, but in some ways, I felt guilty because I was only trying to do the best for all the people in the league rather than just
Yeah.
the owners. And
Yeah.
like that's why I've set up International Paddock with Mike and Sam, and obviously the podcast that has Jamie and Scott on it as well. It's to highlight
Yeah.
real racing, to highlight the fact that these things are just games, but the real life racing is there, and it's also to
Mm.
highlight that Formula One isn't the only motorsport out there. We
Yeah.
barely ever.
Yeah.
Jamie will tell you, he's in the chat right now, how many times we've covered Formula One over the past 2 seasons. We're going on to episode 5 next Monday of season 2, so that's actually technically 20 episodes of International Paddock podcast, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think we've done maybe 2 episodes dedicated to Formula One in the aspect of we looked at the price point
Mm.
to go to a race, and also
Oh yeah.
the level of at which we also discussed the hatred that we have for Formula One in its prioritization over essential more races and stuff. When we talked about that on a separate podcast, and now we started trickling in bits and pieces about Formula One into the framework of the podcast, but still
Yeah.
to us it wasn't interesting because there's no interesting racing there. I had more fun talking about the WRC Estonia race for the rally the other day than I had talking about Formula One and Lando Norris breaking a trophy. That was the only interesting thing from Hungary, except from
But
qualifying.
yeah, I mean, I ju- so is the thing. So I in a season like this where we are 11 races in and Verstappen and Red Bull have won all 11 of them, it's a formality at this point. To the point where now we're looking at the season midway through. We haven't even reached what Spa, Singapore, Japan yet. And realistically, the title's already over. We're just waiting for Verstappen to officially be crowned champion,
Yeah,
and Red Bull to officially be crowned constructors, and we're also waiting for the cost cap, which is supposed to be coming out in a couple of weeks for the previous season. But like, so here's I think we all want like a great all season round racing product, and I'll use 2021 with this because
that was a
I
fantastic
noticed.
season of racing.
Yeah, so I noticed that right like before like 2021 began, I was hearing all these commercials on the radio, on the TV, promoting, Hamilton Verstappen, and it's clear what the media wanted because they literally suffered what 7 years of Mercedes, and yeah, you
Yeah,
might say, oh yeah, but Vettel in the later years and the Mercedes Civil War. I mean, okay, those two out of when you can only think of those two reasons out of 7 years of dominance to justify a sport being entertaining, that has a problem. And you have to be honest with yourself. Formula One, when it comes to a racing perspective, is probably the worst racing series in the world.
oh
You
yeah,
can compare it to Formula E, you can compare it to IndyCar. Like, and yes, you might say, well, IndyCar does, it has ovals. Formula E. well, the engine, well, quote, engine sounds horrific, and the driving standards are absolutely atrocious, and the tracks as well. They're just
It's
very,
just
they're all
street
street circuit
tracks.
dependent. But I think I've just been thinking about it, like just like how bad the racing is in Formula One, and I think it's simply because of. I think the reason is spec series. I think
Yeah.
honestly, the thing is this: Formula One, when it comes to like driver performance, it's not a driver's sport, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, let's take what? Well, Max and Lewis. Max this season, and name me, name me a dominant Lewis campaign. Let's see, what 2015 or 2017 maybe or something.
Yeah.
Like Mercedes had the best car, and it's not like oh, like Ferrari and stuff. Ferrari eventually fell away, with reliability, and then 2018, arguably they had a quick car than the Mercedes, but driver errors because of Vettel and all that stuff cost them the title. Um, but I just think that it's not really a driver reliant sport. If you have the best car, and it's clear that you have the best car, you should be performing every single week.
Definitely.
And like Sergio Perez as well. I mean, the fact that his teammate is leading the world championship right now by 110 points, and he's won like what, well, so 7 in a row. I think yeah, 7 in a row this season so far, and yet his teammate Perez hasn't even got out to Q1 5 consecutive times.
Yeah.
So we're just looking at that. I'm thinking, dude, if you can't make Q3 or even Q2 in the best car, you don't deserve that seat. And look, Perez, we all know that Perez is a good driver. I mean, what he did for Racing Point in 2020, he literally carried that team in like the
Mm.
last 4 or 5 races once they announced that Vettel was replacing him. Um, but it's just that Formula One has never been a true racing series where the best driver wins, and it's always been
It's about
not the
teams.
best driver but the best car design. And
Yeah.
obviously, we credit Adrian Newey, James Allison, back even let's say
All about James Braun.
Ferrari, yeah, Ross Brawn as well
Ross
for
Braun, sorry, not
Ferrari
James
with
Braun.
Michael. It's always the best car. However, when you're watching IndyCar, it's the complete opposite.
Colin Chapman as
And
well for Lotus.
yeah,
Back in the early
exactly.
years. But yeah, I mean, you look at these things, and that's just the way it is. We've got Mike in the
Mm.
chat. Hello, Mike. Welcome for
What's up?
joining. Um, Now, we're going to move a little bit away from sort of Formula One as a whole
Mm.
now. We're going to talk a little bit more about yourself again. So, Tom, when did you start sort of league racing as as a sort of hobby or sim racing as such?
So, okay, so realistically, I looked at league racing as a form of like, YouTube type of like entertainment back in like 2013 with ARL, with Fan 91, Limitless back in the day, Matty, just the OGs of YouTube, and I just thought that that was very like entertaining. And obviously back then I didn't really have connection to like the internet on my Xbox, so I couldn't really race online. But realistically, the first time I got into proper league racing was, I'd say, 2015. I'd say the second half of F1 2015. We all know how bad F1 2015 is. It's arguably the worst Formula One game of all time. But the second half of the game, the online kind of got better a bit, and I started to league race and as a hobby. But I couldn't really do it a lot because I was in year 11 and I had my exams and stuff. Uh, but yeah, that was really like the first time, that the first game I got like league racing into, and technically that's how I met Vapaku online through F1 2015. But just going on to that, as far as like actual league racing going week to week, I'd say probably 2016 was the first time I started to really treat league racing as a hobby. I would join, I think it was Pez back in F1 2016. And again, it seems like a long time ago, man. Jesus Christ.
Because it was 7
Uh,
years ago.
7 years ago, man.
Yeah.
Fuck me, I'm old. But yeah, just like it was more of like a hobby, not more of a chore. It was just like, okay, I get to race with a lot of guys online. and we're shooting this seriously. So let's see how it is. And it was really fun and just like, and you know, back then I was I was 16, nearly 17 at the time, or probably 17. And yeah, let's just say back then my racecraft compared to what it is now wasn't really the best.
Never is though when you start
Um,
out and you're that young. It's just sometimes things.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, certainly, yeah. Just ask Fap at that. So, uh, yeah, so 2016, go and do pairs. Uh, Obviously there was a massive mess with pairs how they ended 2016, and then I don't know if you heard of Jack Spa. I think you might have heard of him,
Might have.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was running a league called TWRL
All
on the
right.
end of
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know who you're talking about
yeah,
now.
yeah. So like he literally was running that league on the end of 2016, and so I joined, and then we move on to 2017, and then that's how I was looking for another league to join because I wasn't really enjoying TWRL.
Hmm.
Nothing, not because of like the racecraft or nothing. I think it was just because of just the pace in general, and I just wanted something more equal, maybe competitive. And then that's where, you know, me, Vapid, you know, Kirby really started to talk about forming our own league and stuff. Um, I'm not going to mention that league. I don't. I mean, I don't know if, about what's going on with like the with Papa Champs and this Twitch stream,
Oh,
but
don't worry. You can mention any things. There's no hatred for anyone, any league on here. We've all got a level
yeah,
of respect for everyone that can run a league. So you can mention any league. I think the league you're talking about is RFL, isn't it?
yeah. So it was late 2017 when me, Vapid, and Kirby started to talk about running our own league. And at the time, I never really ran. Well, yeah, I never really like ran my own league. And at the same time, if we were to run this league, we I would get the chance to race against Kirby, against Vapid, and against other, you know, guys like that. And I feel I'm a little bit pissed at the time because, you know, there's a good friend of mine, Don Omar, who
Hmm.
used to do league racing on 2016. Vapid used to race against him all the time, and when we started RFL, we just missed out on Omar. So the one guy I'll never race is Omar, and I'm fucking pissed about it. But obviously we moved into 2018, first season of RFL, and to be honest, it was really enjoyable first season. You know, just like even though like we had like Rosberg in there, ninjas. Oh man, it's just all the memories starting to come back
Yeah,
now. But
Rosberg. I miss him, man. Like he was a good guy.
yeah,
I sometimes speak to Saj to this day. More, it's more through his missus than anyone else because he's
oh
never really
yeah,
on social media anymore. But
uh,
with the situation that happened last year with XCR, I think he just wanted to get away from
oh
league
yeah,
racing. He changed his gamer tag and what he started trying to league race again. And
yeah,
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'll always welcome him back with open arms. I've got
yeah, man.
massive respect for Saj, and he, in many ways, I'm gonna say this now, he was part of the brainchild for me bringing in International Paddock as a whole because he helped me design the idea in my
Yeah.
head by telling me, well, you could potentially start a website. Why don't you do a website? Or why don't you do like a news outlet where people can do it? And then it
Mm.
ended up being a podcast. It ended up being everything that we are today. So to him, in many ways, he is an original founder of the idea, and he'll always be welcome in International Paddock as somebody that is very special to me for helping me create that idea. And I think we got to know each other from racing as well. I mean, I wasn't
Mm.
very good, but the little battles that we did have, I enjoyed.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was getting into like a league racing. I didn't start league racing until late on in 2020. Sort of like my second season.
Oh,
Jamie will tell
during
me about
during
that.
lockdown, was it like during
Yeah,
lockdown?
it would have been just after. So it would have been just after the first lockdown,
Oh,
probably March time.
oh wow.
2021 potentially. Actually, that's when I started league racing. But
Jesus.
I that's where I met because I met Kieran Wright 92.
Great
And
commentator, by the way, I will
yeah,
say that.
he is, and obviously somebody that we don't really mention anymore. It's a Dom
Yeah.
through Invictus. When I was doing Invictus comms, I started out as a commentator. Imagine that. I started out as a commentator before even league racing. And I started out, I did the Thursday night realistic performance league for the Xbox side of things in Invictus. And
Yeah.
Kieran and Dom, we started getting really close because they were comms on the
Mm,
Tuesday. And
yeah.
both Kieran and Dom would jump in so every now and again. They would take turns of helping with co-comms until Matty came along and helped with that. And
Yeah.
the thing is that I got to know Kieran and Dom really well, and I ended up kind of going into the league that they raced in, and that was SFR. Because one
Yeah.
day, on all games that I still play to this day, and I was racing on it again at the weekend there in the 6 hours of Spa, is ACC, and we were on the Xbox, and we were around Kyalami, right? And here he is, here's SFR Leclerc,
Yeah.
right there, racing on the same track, and Kieran goes, I know those guys. And Dom's like, oh my god, it's those guys from F1 XL. And they got to know each other
Oh
because of that.
yeah.
And it was SFR Piastri as well. It wasn't Piastri at the time, but it was Jackson. And yeah, we jumped in a party with him and we were racing on ACC and we got to know each other
Oh
through that. To which, Kieran and that started racing in SFR first because I wasn't too sure about it at first, right?
yeah.
And when I joined it, I realised it was such an environment that I was looking forward to every week, every Saturday night. I was looking forward to coming home from work
Yeah.
when I started working again after furlough,
Mm,
and I was really sort of like coming home, enjoying it. And then during the week, when I wasn't working, I was online with the boys, and we were playing
yeah.
F1, we were playing ACC, we were playing other games, and we were chatting, we were having a good time.
Yeah.
And that was through a period of turmoil in my life. I
Oh yeah.
I would only it was only maybe 6 to 8 months out of a breakup at the time, and I was
Oh.
struggling mentally. I was struggling mentally. It happened sort of during lockdown, and I was in a
Oh
position
yeah.
where my whole entire life was crumbling in front of me, and I had nothing else to do. I had nowhere to go. I had very little friends, and I was just struggling to kind of keep going. And
Yeah.
league racing was the one thing that kept me sane. I'm just wondering if
Yeah.
like maybe you gravitated towards league racing in that aspect as well, or
Well, well, I wouldn't really gravitate towards like league racing, but I will say I do gravitate to a kind of a similar situation where in my opinion, I honestly feel like each and every one of us go through a bit of a difficult stage during our lives where like a certain thing happens and like the recovery period takes longer to to happen, and there's a certain time period where we feel like really like bad, or we're just trying to get better and we just can't. And I remember like lockdown, like 2020, like the first half of lockdown wasn't that bad, but I would definitely say like the last 2 3 months of 2020 into 2021, and then the first 4 5 months of 2021, they were like really hard for me. Just from a personal standpoint, because like the whole house was getting done, and there was a lot of shit that was going my way, that was happening to me, and yeah, it wasn't really a good time in my life. I usually have arguments with my dad and with my dad's friend, and to be honest, like it just wasn't really a good time in my life. And I kind of had a similar feeling back in 2017 because I had just left school in the summer of 2017, and I decided that I was mentally burnt out a bit after school because I literally did school for like a solid what I think it was like 12 years, 11 years or something.
yeah.
So I just decided to take a 1 year break from that, and yeah, I was just literally just stuck in the house all day, and that's how I got into eventually league racing. And to go back to your point of recognizing other guys from certain leagues that you race with, you mentioned how with Dom and stuff from F1 XL. There are a lot of guys that I do recognize from other leagues. I think that's how I met Kirby from another league as well.
Mm.
Kirby, Constant Ryan, back from SFR, back on F1 2021. The guy was rapid in SFR, and he still is today. And I think some of the best battles I've ever had was against him. And yeah, a lot of other names, a lot of other guys that I race against. Raced, in a different league before. Um, but I will say this: there is a certain stage where we try to just take our minds off the current situations we're in, if it just be personal issues, family issues, financial issues, or even life issues maybe. And trust me, I've been there before where you've held out, where you try to hold on and you just don't feel like it's worth it anymore. And everyone says, you got to keep going, you got to keep going. But like, how long do you have to keep on going before you just say enough is enough? And um, I'm I think the best thing that we can do as far as address our mental issues and our situations is just to be open about them. Just talk about how it all happened, how it affected us, and what did we do to make ourselves better. And I just remember the two situations that happened to me, like the aftermath. I started to eat better and eat less. Started to drink more water, and I started to just not react as instantly to certain situations, but just to be more open minded, and that really did wonders for me, as far as just getting me through situations, and I think it improved my mental toughness. Not just with personal situations, but also in work, and also with what I do, obviously on YouTube, and as far as the whole YouTube hobby, I really do like making content. I really do like putting my stuff out there, even though there's a chance that thousands of people, maybe millions of people one day can see my content and maybe laugh about it. And like, the one problem I had is that, like, I've been doing well, like, YouTube since 2013. I had another channel back years ago. And towards the end of like year 11, year 12, a lot of people found out about this first channel.
Hmm.
And yeah, it was just one of those things where as soon as people saw me, they would mention it, and I didn't really know how to handle it.
Yeah.
And I thought everyone was like making fun of me, so I was like, shit, I better delete it. So I did. And but as far as like this channel is concerned, I don't really have anything to hide. Look, I love Formula One. I love playing the games. Um, and yeah, it's just one of those things in it.
Do
But
you
as
think
far
that's
as
maybe
just like,
something to do with maturity, though, Tom? So, like, obviously, as we get a bit older, we understand
mm,
that the time and effort that we put into something is not, it
yeah,
doesn't go unnoticed, and
yeah,
the things that we do are things that we specifically enjoy. We're not putting
yeah,
content out there specifically for people to hate on. And
yeah,
I think that's the one thing about today's landscape, is that no matter what content you put out there, someone wants to have an opinion on it.
yeah,
Everyone forms their opinion about everything, but you've always got to remember
mm,
that your opinion is the most important one out of all of them. And I
yeah,
think for me, as a content creator as well, who dabbled in it at the start of this year, just tried a little bit with Automobilista 2, and obviously
mm,
my time's been pretty much consumed with international paddock, so content side of things has not really been able to produce much. But knowing that
yeah,
I created something that, even just 50 people can view,
yeah,
maybe just like we created a short out of Mike predicting last week's race that, in many ways was enjoyable for me,
yeah.
and that reached nearly 340 people this
Oh,
week.
that's
So,
sick.
and that's a short, but to us that's 340 views of people that have
Yeah,
seen me and Mike doing what we do, seeing you guys, and that's what we want.
yeah,
And we wouldn't do this sort of situations where we actually want to create content for you guys to enjoy,
mm,
if we didn't think that it was going to be beneficial for everyone. And like, for me, as a, I don't even want to call myself a content creator, because I'm not.
I'm not really a content
I'm
creator. I'm
a
I'm just someone who just
I'm
likes
someone
to.
that enjoys racing, and I want to share my passion with people. And it's
Yeah,
the same with Mike.
same
It's the
here.
same with Jamie in the chat. It's the same with Sam. When we do international paddock as well as Scott, we're trying to share our love of racing with you, expressing our emotions
Yeah,
about things, not to change your opinion, but to have, so that you guys get an opinion from somebody else, so that you guys enjoy yourself while watching a little bit something different. So for me, creating content is not, it's not a job, and I don't ever want it to be. It's
mm,
it's a way of making people smile.
Yeah.
And that's why you would see at every Papa Champs episode, every Papa Champs race now, you'll see a start screen
Mm.
that I've crafted. This week's one was a little bit low effort because I was waiting for Panda to send over some Getty files to put it all together, and I didn't really have time to cut it up, but I put it
Uh,
together for you. Previous Papa Champs, however, though, it's been, something funny at the start and whatever.
yeah.
It's the same with ERC, with the content that me and Mike create for them as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
We want to make sure that everybody kind of gets a fair share of the content that they want to watch, and that's where it's coming from. But just going to go back onto you for a little bit. So obviously you started that sort of league racing and you met people through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Would you call those people friends?
Um. Yes. Yes. I definitely would because, like, I think there's now a certain point now where I've now known these guys for multiple years, and I do speak to them pretty much near every day in one way or the other. If it's through Twitter group chats, if it's through Discord, if it's through Xbox Live parties or league racing. Look, I do speak to these guys now near enough every single day. You know, Angelo, Kirby, Vapid, Omar, occasionally you, Panda, Scott, and there are times where I will say that we don't really get along. I think, me and Vapid are kind of like on and off. Me and Scott, same thing. Um, but yeah, I do consider these guys like my friends, like really, and it sounds weird because like you consider them friends, yet you've never like actually seen them. And we,
Yeah.
we, we were talking about this literally weeks and weeks ago about oh, how cool would it be if we all met each other in a pub or something, and it just got weird to the point where like okay, I will be honest, there's a lot of questionable things that we do say
Yeah.
in our parties as
Of
far as like
course.
randomness is concerned. But that's what makes it so fun. And we literally explain that if we were to meet in public in a pub, we wouldn't say half the things that we could say on an Xbox party
Yeah, because
because
you
it would
don't
just
see
be
each other's
weird.
face. Because you wouldn't say, oh, you wouldn't say, oh, I just ran over a hippie in GTA 5 in a pub, would you? Yeah, or other weird things that comes out of people's mouths. The thing is, it's this level of respect that we have for each other as well as
Yeah,
guys.
yeah,
The problem I see within any sort of gaming community and stuff like that is that even though we as guys we don't see each other on these
yeah.
games and anyone as well, we still haven't learned a way to open up.
Well, well, um,
I think there's
uh,
certain situations where we do open up in little dribs and drabs, right?
yeah,
And we
yeah,
feel like we can open up more on Xbox, and that's why we play. Like, as some of the reason why a lot of us play games
yeah,
online
yeah,
is so that we can meet people that have the same interests, and we can share opinions about our own life, and not it be a judgmental space. And that's the thing
yeah,
why
yeah. I
uh,
agree.
part of the reason why us as people play games. I mean,
Yeah,
just it's interesting because me when we were talking about this idea with yourself with candid pit stops, it was
mm,
I tried to pitch the idea to you in a way that would be beneficial to all of us because
yeah,
I think you stood out like a sore thumb in some ways to me as being somebody that I really in some ways could connect with in the sense that we both started sim racing in a different way in
yeah,
some ways but have similar opinions about racing, similar
mm,
interests, and our life is not too different from each other after all.
yeah,
I think a lot of people think because I sit in a party and I say controversial stuff and I'm Goose. It's like, hey Goose, how are you today? It's normally, alright boys, what you saying? And Paul appears. It's just a random guy, and they're like, oh, it's Paul, and they don't know who that is. To me, I don't
mm,
have bipolar. I don't. It's a funny voice I put on because it's funny, and it's the same. We put it on the streams and people like that.
yeah, yeah,
And that's kind of the thing for me. I absolutely love about being online is I can make you guys laugh. I
yeah,
can make you smile, and you're the same. I think we both share a similar interest in being honest, sometimes at the wrong points,
yeah,
but then also learning to make people like laugh after the fact with a,
mm,
a funny anecdote. You know,
yeah,
I don't know if you feel that way, but I do. But it's definitely something that um, it's fun, and I think some people really take me seriously when I say things, and I think I've really upset a few people with things that I've said in parties, and it's not even a case
Mm,
of me trying to upset people. It's just me either being honest or trying to make a funny anecdote that's gone wrong.
yeah, I
You
think
know?
we're all like responsible for saying stuff that we don't exactly mean.
Mm.
Like if like so, for example, like if I'm like the worst time for me to really like say something I don't mean is when I'm coming back home and I'm like drunk or something,
Yeah.
and I don't agree with someone, and I say something that I don't really mean, but I say it anyway, and it comes off as kind of like I meant it when in reality I didn't. Like I kind of hate that, but the one thing I've been trying to do recently is I'm trying to be like more like open and more closer to my guys as far as Xbox is concerned. But like it, like the thing is, it's just a little bit weird. Like I don't know how to feel about it, but like I'm always trying to, if someone's like, if Kirby or Vapid or Omar don't like they haven't had a good day, I'll always try to like be like, hey man, you're right, what's up, man, and always try to be like close to them and stuff. But like it just feels weird that 1 minute you can be saying all these weird things, laughing, pissing yourself laughing
Yeah.
on GTA and on all this stuff with these guys, and then the next minute you might be actually talking about some serious shit,
Yeah.
like something about someone's life and stuff. And I've been in a situation where I've been in that situation where like I was in the shit,
Mm.
and the only escape route I had was really my Xbox. And but yeah, pretty much.
I remember, and I don't know if you want me to talk about this, but just sort of a couple of months back, actually, you came on to the party. We were on GTA,
Yeah.
and you came into the party, and I think you were a bit angry. You were not
Oh yeah.
particularly happy about life,
Yeah.
and everybody was essentially, in some ways, they thought that it was just an average Tom Gorian thing. But my
Yeah.
first instinct was to be like, guys, can you please be quiet for a minute? Let me talk to Tom. And I tried
Yeah.
to open you up a little bit and get you to talk about it.
Yeah.
Given you didn't talk about it at the time, because I think you were a bit angry about other things that involved the people in the party, and I think that was fair enough.
Yeah.
But in some ways as well, you opened up in some way to me by saying, "I promise you, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Don't worry about me." To which that put me at ease, knowing that I was going to see you online the next day or whenever, and know that
Yeah.
you'd be fine. I think
Like
that's the thing with me is I like to know that I'll see you the next day. You know,
yeah.
because I don't want to say something or someone to be a bit upset or whatever, and they just don't want to join a party again because of that. So
Yeah. I mean, I thought when you said that, I thought like I think the way that you speak, like you sound very sarcastic, and I'm not trying to like to take the piss or anything,
I
but
get
like
that a lot.
like the way you said it, I thought you was trying to be very sarcastic. But yeah, there are a lot of times where I can come off as an ass. And the one thing I can do is just admit that there are times that I can be a major asshole, and I think it's good that I'm honest about that. I think we all have times where we're going to be an asshole, and we can say, you know what, just fuck this shit. I'm going to be an ass today,
Yeah,
and then the
exactly.
next day we can just like release it and just be like, okay, I'm calm, I'm sound, I'm in a good mood. Let's do this. But yeah, I am responsible for releasing my anger on the wrong people.
Yeah, and I think we're all like that. I mean,
Yeah,
there's been many situations that like, even Mike will tell you that I've come in and I've just been so angry, and I've
yeah,
tried to vent my frustrations out. It's even been the same coming into the parties and stuff like that with the boys. I'm like, I'm
yeah.
trying to hold things back, and I think that's maybe a part of the reason as well, like why maybe me and Vapid don't get on, because I think one day I
Mm,
may have sort of unleashed a little bit of maybe the side of me that I don't want anybody to see, sort of thing, where it's just like I'm literally the most open human being ever. I will tell you when you're doing things wrong. I will tell you
yeah.
everything. And Vapid, I think he was getting on a lot of people's nerves, and he was getting on
Oh
my
yeah,
nerves, and that was enough for me to sort of beat him down into a pulp. And that's why I don't think we just don't get along, and that's fair. Like I have nothing against the guy, and I've always said that. I even said it last night at Papa Champs. I
yeah,
said, look, I know we don't get along, but personally, I do think you're one of the best race car drivers I think I've ever seen on a video game, and there's
But wait,
no way about it. So,
wow, that's a massive compliment. That
and
is. I mean,
I just try to be honest because it is truth. Because I
yeah.
watched him through SFR, and Jamie's still in the chat right now. I think he may be speaking to ATC right now, but
Mm.
he'll even say that the battles that both him, Vapid, and Constant Ryan shared through of Formula One 2020 and 21 were
Oh
some
yeah.
of the most immense, intense battles I think you could ever see. And being part of that race made me want to race even more. And
Oh yeah.
like, I never say this because I think it sounds a bit cringy, but I wanted to be like them. I want to be able to battle up the front. I wanted to be battling like Vapid was battling with Constant Ryan, and I
Yeah.
wanted to battle with Jamie one day. I wanted to battle with Constant Ryan one day. So it was always one of those things like with Shane, Jamie, and Vapid all going at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was enough to make me really want to work hard at the game, and it got me
Mm.
so far, so short, and I couldn't compete with them because just wasn't as quick. I'm not. I'll always say this. I'm not a single seater
Yeah.
driver, but I will say now that I absolutely. That's the biggest compliment I think I've ever fished out to anybody, and I don't think I've ever had a chance to tell him that. But
Well, like the thing is this, I've been racing against Vapid since 2016 because that's the first. Like, well, yeah, it was 2016 because I raced against Vapid on. It was like there was a Twitch streamer on 2015. Her name was Jess, and she did like a bit of a piss take league, and that was the first time I raced against Vapid. And then we raced in pairs on F1 2016, and we really had some epic battles. I think there was a battle in Spain. We fought in Germany. Vapor knows what happened in Germany, especially the last half, last corner. Um, and then obviously all the shit with RFL over the seasons, over the years, and but like when you race against someone for that long, you always want to beat them first, and there have been times where I'll admit where it has gotten a bit toxic, and that's the one thing I want to talk about next if we
yeah,
have
yeah,
time.
we do have
Just
time.
like
Don't worry.
how, like, like so in like 2016, 2017, league racing as a whole wasn't as toxic or as competitive as what it is now. And I'm very interested to get your thoughts on this because I think a lot of people have have a opinion on league racing as a whole if they've raced, right, if they're racing right now, if they're racing, if they raced a year ago or even back in 2016 like Omar or something like that, where back when they were racing, it was very, very casual, very laid back, and you didn't really need to sweat, quote, sweat as much. But now with the introduction of F1 esports and all these higher up leagues, and just with like younger drivers coming through and stuff, it's made league racing, I think, very, very intense. Oh shit, my fucking headset's died. Whoops. But it's made league racing very intense and also just a very I don't know how to say it, just like very sweaty and toxic. I'd say that.
I
Yeah.
would agree with you on that one, Tom. I think part of the reason, even though Papa Champs in some ways isn't fully fulfilling that project just yet, it will
Mm,
one day. I
yeah.
I want to say that the toxicity within a community has to change over time. It can't just change instantly. It's about changing
Yeah.
people's outlook on things and trying to explain to people like, what the hell are you doing? Do you
Yeah.
think that you could speak to your mother that way? Do you think that if I came to your house right now with a bottle of beer, would you speak to me that way? You know,
Kind of like a typical Call of Duty lobby back in like
exact.
Black Ops 1 and Modern
That's what
Warfare
it
2.
sounds like to me because the group chats that I see after some of the races. I mean, for the first two rounds of Papa Champs was just absolutely disgusting, abysmal. People
Yeah.
really cussing each other out. People wanting to just get down each other's throats as quick as possible and just beat the shit out of them. I was like, calm
Mm,
down. It's only a video game. It's not even a
yeah.
sim. It's not even a simulator, and you are treating this as if it's real life. I understand the emotions are real. They are real.
Yeah.
But it's about how you conduct yourself that makes you a better person, right?
Yeah.
only one ever. Like, I'm gonna be honest, right? And I think Jamie remembers this, and it was one guy who
Mm.
got on my nerves, and he really, really. I think it was because he was my teammate, but didn't act like my teammate, which
Oh
got
yeah,
me.
yeah.
And he didn't speak to me, didn't do anything to assist me. And
Mm.
Kieran knows this guy as well because I told Kieran, like, I can't believe you put me with this guy. He
Yeah.
is an absolute arse. And it was one day around
Mm.
Silverstone that I had enough because he blamed me for a contact that was purely his fault,
Yeah,
and
I
the
know
stewards
exactly.
the
Yeah.
stewards deemed it his fault.
Yeah.
And I ended up in the wall crashing out, and he continued
Mm.
on because he went for a stupid move while I was fighting for someone, like a position in front of
Yeah.
him, and he went for a stupid move and binned me off. So I went,
Uh,
you know what? Have this, and I let it rip on him, and I hated myself for it. I even told. I remember telling Jamie and Kieran about this, and I was nearly in
mm.
tears because I hated myself for it.
Yeah.
I'm not that kind of guy to rip into somebody, right? Even when I come to
Yeah.
like play like on ACC now with low fuel motorsports, yeah, I'll have a hissy fit
Yeah.
and I'll moan when I get punted off by some dickhead in a Porsche or whatever who doesn't know how
Mm.
to drive or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
in reality, I don't go straight into the DMs to him and saying you are such a cockwomble, blah 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 blah. I say to him like, do you know what happened in that situation? And I ask for his point of view, and then I say, well, actually, after looking at the point of view, you turned in on me, and
Yeah.
we both ended up in the wall. So, or you decided to push me off the road because you didn't think that I had enough space or whatever. So, the easiest thing to say is like, next time, just leave a bit more space, especially with lag or whatever. I'm not that kind of guy. I hate that. But on stream,
Yeah.
I will whine and moan like a little bitch till the cows
Yeah.
come home.
Same there.
The most
It's just a
respect that I
competitive nature,
have
isn't it?
the most respect I have for somebody at the moment is the guy called Rory Alexander, right?
Mm.
And he's obviously he's now a Veloce partner, but he before that I watched some of his ACC streams and on LFM, and he was getting punted off like fuck, but he'd be like,
Mm.
yet again I'm getting punted. That's it. Like,
Yeah.
well, and it's like, oh, well, you're getting banned. Not even caring, not calling him a cockwomble. And I'm like, oh my god, what is this? This is somebody who's so, like, I mean, inside you can see he's boiling over.
Yeah.
But as a person, he's not wanting to go and attack people. And I think
Mm.
that's why I relate with him, because I don't want to do that either. Yes, I've told Vapid to shut up sometimes, and in many ways I've told you to shut up in chats as well, because I don't want to hear certain things, because I don't
Yeah.
want to hear the league racing bullshittery between
Yeah.
conflicts, because there's no such thing as a conflict when it comes to an online game.
Mm.
You create the conflict within yourself, and you want to inflict that onto somebody else. So
But I'm like my worst like enemy with that, like because like, when I'm like league racing, I'm so like I'm really competitive, and like that really goes like really comes out when I'm racing, and when something happens, I don't flip, but like at the same time, I just really overreact, and if it's like a situation where it's literally like like next to nothing, I'll like just like flip out a little bit and just like react. I think that's the one thing I need to just work on, just like stop reacting to things that don't need to be reacted to,
yeah,
and just understand that look, this type of shit happens. It's league racing. That's it.
and it's kind of like it's not even just your sort of worst enemy. I think it's everybody's worst enemy at times because
Yeah.
you don't know where to draw the line, because I guess sometimes it is online and you don't really see the person. For me now, as I look forward and I look on at some of the situations I've been put in my life, for whether it be ACC or whether it be Formula
Yeah.
One 2020 or 21, I look back at the experiences that I've had and I think to myself, this is what's made me who I am as a better driver in some ways, and I know when to give room, I know when not to give room. I mean, a good example was when
Mm.
Dom we were racing around the Nordschleife, it wasn't Nordschleife, the Nürburgring GP circuit on ACC
Yeah.
for SFR ACC, and just because he knew he could get under my skin, he was just trying to push me off the track on
Yeah.
purpose, as he like, just because I was trying to pass him and I was alongside him, I had
Yeah.
right to space. He was trying to push me off, you know, and I was getting so annoyed that I ended up having to like basically not retaliating but holding my
Yeah.
line in
Mm.
a position where I was like, I'm not running to the edge of the track. And there was many occasions he pushed me off. He spun me
Yeah.
off because of that situation, and that was enough. I rage
Yeah.
quit, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. I'm not racing in this championship. I have had enough. As long as he's here, I'm
Mm.
not doing it. And Jamie will remember that as well, because I did throw a bitch fit. I did, because in many ways, I just felt like he could do what he wanted. And I did
Yeah.
throw a bitch fit. And it was just because he knew he could get under my skin. But now, people think that they can get under my skin online and think that it affects me as a driver.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there were situations in the league that I was racing in ACC where drivers were trying to get under my skin, and I just literally
Yeah.
was like, "Good one, eh?" Literally, good one, eh? And that's it. Yeah, sure, no problem, man. Go for it. And just
Yeah.
letting them have their moment in the spotlight. They thought they were getting under my skin, and then the next race I would trounce them. But it's just like, how do you feel in that situation if somebody's trying to get under your skin? Because I know that from past experience that I know you do get riled up because Dom used to wind
Yeah.
you up like fuck. He
Yeah.
really did. Yeah.
uh,
How did you feel in those
um,
situations?
well, it would really depend as far as like what the situation is. Like, if it's like, it just depends. Like, if I'm in a race, like winning position or like a podium position, obviously the stakes are more higher, and like so in Italy, like we did an RFL race in Italy this past week, and I was at the back and I'd clawed my way back into third place before getting punted at turn one, and like obviously at that situation you like you want to give up and you want to like just like say, you know what, fuck this, and just like why am I wasting my time, but you always want to keep on going just in case, like,
Just in case something happens
some,
and you can get that
yeah, and there was
position
a
back.
safety
Yeah.
car. There was a safety car that came out afterwards. So I'm like, okay, at least I'm back in the race. And then on the restart, I'm setting up a switchback move in towards turn one, and then I get spun again. It's just like, well, when it happens like a lot of the time, you're just like, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I wasting my time? Like, why am I wasting 5 hours of my time practicing for a race where I'm getting taken out twice and three times when
Yeah,
I could be doing
exactly.
something else? Um, but like when it comes to like pure reaction, I don't try and get like really like fucked up. Like as far as like reactions to the point where I'm just like in a party, I'm screaming. Like if it's like a racing incident, like I think like recently I've like been more mature as far as looking at instances, understanding situations, and knowing if certain instances were my fault or not. And if I don't agree with a situation that wasn't my fault, I'll say it. And I mean, as far as like stewards are concerned and penalties, that's on them and stuff. But like, if I believe that I wasn't, in the wrong, then I don't really believe I'm in the wrong. But if I break too late, if I take someone out, I mean, I remember there was an instance on the last game of Baku. I was racing against Angelo and I broke too late, slightly later, and then I just punted him off. And yeah, that was just something I immediately accepted for. But I got like a bullshit penalty. Well, I wouldn't say bullshit because it was a penalty, no doubt, but it was like a 20-second penalty for something that shouldn't have really been 20 seconds. So,
Yeah.
but like I like to be more mature when it comes to like instances and if it's my fault or not.
So like in many situations, right? So you feel now a little bit more mature about your actions online, especially when it comes to like dealing with that, the situations. Do you feel
Yeah,
a little bit more mature about that?
yeah. I mean, because look, it's not like we're like driving the real life cars. It's not like we're driving real life Formula One with our lives on the line, and where there's money in stake like F1 esports. It's just a video game where we're spending a whole entire day out of our week racing against others online for just bragging rights. And I think there are certain people who take the piss and like take it too far with the egos and stuff
Yeah.
to the point where like you just like listening to these guys and you think like, dude, like just tone it down. But it's just it's just a game at the end of the day.
My answer to anybody like has an ego, I just think to myself, have you been scouted? Be honest with me. Have you been scouted for a real team? Are you part of an organisation that actually races in esports, or do
Yeah,
you just think that you've got this ego because you've won maybe 4 league races in your lifetime and you think you're a god? And I think,
yeah,
to me, right, the easy way of saying things, and I think I always say this like on ERC, is that, and I think that's why I love ERC, because there is like
mm,
they make up like these sort of like petty squabbles on purpose most of the time to
yeah,
like rile each other up so that they can race each other better, right? And it always ends up
mm,
in like good relationships at the end most of the time racing. But it's when people don't actually know where the line is drawn that kind of
yeah,
pisses me off, because there's been many situations like in ERC and maybe in like other leagues as well that I've seen where these sort of rivalries actually became real, and
mm,
people really just want to go at each other because of they're just maybe close together on track and they just want to absolutely just smash into each other or take
yeah,
each other out. And it's like that's the sort of situation that you don't want to be in, because
yeah,
it puts you off it, because you know every week you're
mm,
going to get attempted to be taken out by Torpedo, or
mm,
in some ways somebody who just generally doesn't care about your racing line or whatever. But in some ways, right, from like a mental health point of view, do you think that like that sort of situation with the game where drivers are like maybe there's the two sides of the coin with that sort of really getting into the game and maybe crashing out every week or whatever affects you, but then on the other side of the coin, do you think these sort of petty rivalries get to people to the point where their mental health deteriorates? Because I've got a nice answer for that, but I want to hear your point of view.
oof. I agree. I agree with it, but like at the same time, I don't really see it, if that makes sense. I do agree with the fact that, if you're someone like me and you're really, really, really competitive, like it's what I call unhealthy competitive nature,
Yeah,
where like you're so competitive, like anything that happens against you, it's gonna affect you, and it's just something that, like, I know it's gonna happen to me. And if I spend a lot of time like practicing for a race and I don't do well, it does get me down a
yeah,
bit. But at the same time, it works in the other way. If I have like a great race, then I'm gonna be like really chuffed about it. But like as far as like just like the petty like rivalries and stuff, and just the certain attitude affecting other drivers. Look, if I, I honestly think like if you're involved in incidents that involve other drivers, as far as like someone just like dive bombing you, or just like a certain driver crashing into you and you've done nothing wrong, then I think you can't really be mad at that. I mean, you can be mad at the other driver, well, not mad, but like just like,
upset,
yeah,
maybe a little
well,
bit
I'm not
rattled.
really upset, but just be like, hey, what was that about? Like, I was literally in a good position. I've done nothing wrong the entire race. You can be like that, but if you make like certain mistakes, like let's say you're in the race lead, or you're fighting for a podium and you make a mistake and you spin or something, I think that's probably worse, because like it's on you. Like, you're the reason why you lost the podium. You're the reason why you lost the win. You're the reason why you didn't get a good result. Um, but as far as like just, I think the mental pressure is more shown in like the upper leagues. So, for example, PSGL, WOR, and obviously in F1 esports. Because
Yeah,
obviously with F1 esports,
the whole
like
world
F1
sees it.
esports, it's like the highest level of like, not even, it's not even league racing anymore. It's genuine esports.
It's a proper esport,
Um,
yeah, with a prize pool and everything. It
yeah,
is extreme amounts of money,
yeah,
like
man,
millions of pounds at stake sometimes.
yeah,
A lot of gear, everything that that teams take and drivers get a money from.
yeah,
And so you answering that question is you think it's more down like your mental health gets more affected when it's something like that you cause rather
yes.
than what
Yes,
other people
because like
cause. Yeah,
like yourself, like it was your fault. So like, for example, I can give you a best example. If I'm like leading a race and I've dominated the race 90% through, and I've only got like five full laps to go, all I need to do is bring it home, and I've got literally like a 6 second gap margin to the car behind. All I need to do is bring it home, and I make one mistake. If I like go too wide, lose the back end and the spin, and then I lose the lead, or like something like Brazil 2018 happens or something, I think that affects your mental health worse, especially if you're not. How can I put this? Especially if you're not like there, or you're not like in a good place. Like if you're like racing to like take your mind off it, and something in that race happens to you to the point where you're mentally worse, I think that's probably the worst effect
Yeah, I
that
agree.
can happen to you. But like in my opinion, if I think the best way to approach a league race mentally is that you just get yourself into a mental state where you have to accept that if something happens, it's not going to change it's not going to change anything. It's not like if you lose a race, it's not like you're going to be homeless, or you owe someone like a grand or two, or you have to sell your Xbox. Like it's just like one of those things where, obviously we all want to win. I want to win. I'm very competitive, ultra competitive. And if I don't win or I don't get a good position, it's going to piss me off for a couple of days. And then I'm going to, recharge and say, okay, it's racing, it happens, and I'll come back the next week. Um, but like to say it again, but I'll go back to the whole league racing debacle. F1 esports has turned general league racing from a laid-back, casual environment to a hardcore, try-hard sweatfest, where you
Yeah,
have these 15, 16-year-old kids getting signed to esports teams, and you're thinking, who the hell are these guys? And it turns out these guys are 5 times quicker than you, and you're like, what the hell? Like, how has that happened? And it's just really, and when it gets ugly, it doesn't get fun at all.
yeah, exactly. I think just to answer that question as well, you've got this level of understanding for your own ability for each
Yeah,
track, because you always do a little bit of a recce of the track before you go around it. I mean, come on. For most
yeah,
people, it's not the first time they've raced the track when they go to race it. So, um, you already know the track, you know you're capable, and then you go into the race, maybe you get like three quarters of the way around the race, and then you die because you've
yeah,
smacked a wall too hard. I mean, like Baku, for example, you maybe just dive into the castle section a little bit too hard and clip your front wheel and do a Charles Leclerc into the wall.
yeah,
That's enough to send you into a mental spiral if you're having a hard time. And I think just anything like that, you you want to find something to focus on. I think for me, something that I always focused on was results, and I hated myself for it. So I learned
yeah,
when I went into when SFR expanded to three tiers that I was racing
yeah,
against guys that were just as quick as me in some ways. Maybe a couple of people that should have been in tier two. There was maybe a couple of people in tier one that should have been tier two, and
yeah,
vice versa. But it was just the way that things were made to make it a little bit more competitive. And for me, being a teammate with someone who was extremely quick, and my only job was to just try and get as many points as possible. It took a little bit of pressure off my shoulders, and me and Avtex Flames had a very mutual respect for each other in knowing that I maybe just wasn't as quick as the top guys. Kirby was probably one of my main rivals to race against actually in tier 3 because me and Kirby were similar pace, Cal as well. So some of these guys were my rivals in some ways, and we kind of got on reasonably well in the chat and stuff. So having that allowed me to be a little bit better. But the season before, however, I was just struggling, you know,
mm,
mentally and physically in racing.
yeah,
I couldn't bear to race in some ways. I just didn't want to do it. I felt like I was gonna let everybody down. I felt like I was gonna let myself down by racing, and it was just that
yeah,
mental, that really toxic mentality got to me because
yeah,
I was used to swimming. Swimming is quite a toxic sport in some ways, but the one thing is you're only swimming for yourself, so you
yeah,
only let yourself down. In this situation, I was letting my team down, and potentially, if I made a mistake, I could have let everybody else down because I could have caused a safety car, or I could have like I could have hit somebody hard, and they've crashed out the race, and
mm,
that's my fault, and I feel bad for it. But in
yeah,
many ways, I also feel responsible for my own actions, and I know that in some ways I had to do better. So it really, really
mm,
brought me down. Tier 3 in SFR was probably my sort of point of really, really enjoying racing. And it was just the politics that put me off racing now in leagues. And yes, I am thinking about making a return in some way to a league or two, um,
yeah,
but in some ways as well, I just don't want to.
Yeah,
I
I,
still
I, I
feel
totally
like
see
there's a
that.
level of toxicity that I'm just not interested in. It's not
Yeah,
that I'm not used to it. I've been a part of this community for 3 years now. I've seen pretty much everything under the sun, from racist slurs to, very aggressive tones of text to speech, everything,
yeah,
very angry conversations in parties. You name it, I've seen it. But
yeah,
the one thing that always sort of brings me back is the also comradeship with everybody around you.
yeah.
I love ERC because everybody is like a family to me there. You know, we have a
Mm,
reach out and help chat where people put any problems in their life there, and everybody within the day puts their own 2 cents in and tries to help that person. It's not a case of, it's not about the racing, it's
yeah,
about the person, and that to me is something that most leagues need to implement. I think teams need that. I think leagues need that. Somewhere where you can vent your frustrations with life or death. I remember last year at this time, September, so kind of like July into September, these few months are a very, very tough time for me because
yeah,
it's sort of the end of the summer. We're coming to the end of the summer. A lot of my friends are going back to uni. A lot of my friends don't really want to see each other because they're trying to get as much money before they go back to uni. So, you
yeah,
know, it's very difficult for me knowing that like some of my work colleagues that I'm good friends with, I'm not going to see them for another 6 months or whatever, and
yeah.
or even a year depending on what they're doing for Christmas. And
Mm,
it's difficult for me. It's very difficult. I remember September last year having a really tough time and basically going offline for 3 weeks. I had multiple messages from people wondering where I was, and I felt
yeah,
bad for them knowing that I wasn't there.
yeah,
But at the same time, I needed it because I was struggling. There was a few weeks where I missed comms. Mike will tell you that, where
yeah,
I couldn't actually move. I came home from work and I was that depressed I couldn't move. I had points in my life where I just generally I came home and I went to bed. I didn't care about anything else. And the first people willing to help me were the people that I raced with online. They were the closest to me, closest thing I had to friends at the time, and the guys that I've made good friends with in parties and had fun with them online were the closest thing I had ever had to a proper friendship since COVID, since my girlfriend had left, and I just had a bad time. But and then I threw it all away in August and September time for a chance at detoxifying myself and getting rid of the old narrative that I had to live by. And I did it. I did. I actually got into yoga in that time. Of all things
oh,
that I could have done, I did a women's thing and went to yoga. And it was the
wow.
best thing I ever did. I went that off the rails that I had to find methods at keeping myself sane because I was
Yeah,
going that out of my mind because I couldn't load up my Xbox because the anxiety of having to sit there in a party and not really say anything kind of got to me because I felt people would judge me for that,
yeah,
and because I had nothing to
yeah,
say
I
to
get you
anyone.
completely.
So I think it's important that we all take a screen break, and I think
Yeah,
it's important that everybody kind of pushes themselves to be better and strives to be better
mm,
in a community that is inherently the most toxic community out there. I actually think it's more toxic than COD now. I think
yeah,
FIFA is on a par with F1 because of
yeah,
the esports and level of it. I mean, the fact is that you're going to get bad eggs in F1, you will. But
yeah,
everybody needs to be there for each other. Everybody just needs to understand it's just a fucking game
mm,
and get over it. And I think you're a good example of just in many ways not knowing well knowing when to not give a shit.
yeah,
And I think that's what people need to strive to be, is a little bit more like Tom Gorian in some ways, and just not give a shit about certain things. And I mean, look, people will try and say certain things. I mean, if people see this little podcast we've done, the kind of pit stops, people you race against may try and use this against you. But I just want you to remember this. At least you were brave enough to open up about your life.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. I
I
think that's
bet
the
you they
best thing
couldn't
that
do
we
it.
can do. Just be open and honest about like, oh shit, this time periods, and acknowledge it, and then just try and like move on in the best way we can. but you
Exactly.
can't move on from that without making changes at least.
Yeah, you have to make changes in your life to be honest and be ready to
Yeah,
understand that life isn't all about what we make it. It's about how we create a narrative around ourselves that makes everything
yeah.
better. So, um, yeah, I think overall, I just want to sort of like start wrapping this up now. If any of the things that we talked about in this mini sort of sit down one to one interview with me and Tom has got to you in any way and you would like support or you need some help, please, I'm just going to post a couple of links in the chat, some phone numbers for you to go to. Um, and oh, it's not letting me do it.
Oh God.
I'm going to just assume that's because it's not letting me log in. That's why. Alright, I will do it via my phone. So just bear with me. But yeah, so Tom, like, how did you find this today? Did you really enjoy sitting down and chatting?
Hey, you know what, man? I actually really enjoyed this. It's already what 7:30 right now.
Yeah,
This, man, this has actually been a really enjoyable thing today.
I think we're gonna need to do more of these sort of things with more people, get to know them,
Yeah.
and I think you were the best person to bring on first because it's an important step for everybody if they want to come on
At
and
least
chat
I'm the
about their
first,
life.
wasn't I? Yeah.
Yeah, you were the first. I'm just gonna post a wee link in the chat, a couple of phone numbers and stuff like that for anybody if you're thinking about ending your life or anything because of anything you've experienced online or anything in this podcast has touched you in any way. You can use any of these numbers. I believe they're all active. I can't check them all. Um,
Mm.
there's numbers for Germany. There's numbers for the UK and Ireland. There's numbers for France and Italy and stuff like that in there. So please, if you are in a state of distress, please get help. You know, you don't. Nobody in this world needs to go early before their time, and why should it be you? So please do something about it. And if any of you also would like to chat to me, you can join the International Paddock Discord, and you can send me a DM, and we can chat. I'm always open to an open and honest conversation with any viewer about their mental health. And yeah, I just once again I want to thank you, Tom, for coming on, and
Thank you, man.
it's been a pleasure having you, learning about your life, learning about your experiences.
That's your man.
It's good to know the real person behind the controller, behind the screen, behind the in many ways behind the helmet of the race
Yeah.
car that you're racing against next to you. So, thank you for coming on, Tom, and thank you to everybody who watched this. Uh, Once again, we'll be live again very, very soon. I believe we'll be live on the International Paddock channel on Monday, 5 p.m. for International Paddock podcast, and then straight after that, 8:30 p.m. for Papa Champs. So be there or be a square. And once again, on the podcast
Isn't it B
next week,
squared, not B a square?
no, be a square.
Oh, is it? I thought it was B squared.
I don't care. I say it that way because it's funnier. Be there or be a square. It's funny. Now, anybody who wants to come on the show at all and has a life experience they want to share about league racing, about their life, please do get in touch with myself and we'll get you on to the next Candid Pit Stops. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all in the next one. Good night.